morning.
Hi, good morning.
Hi. Hello, Gary. Gary is having some difficulty earlier
Uh,
on, so apologies.
no worries about that.
Yes,
I,
Neelesh, where are you at right now? Are you in Singapore?
yep, I've been in Singapore for the longest time.
uh,
How about you?
well,
Are you
yeah,
in Singapore or in Malaysia or in Philippines?
I am in Malaysia right now.
Okay.
I sort of escaped in July, so I went
Okay,
back to Malaysia. Yeah. So
cool.
anyway, thank you very much for being with us this morning. So we wanted to reach out to our members and just have a quick, casual chat about how they're doing during this pandemic. I guess, we're both in education, so we have probably more common topics to talk about. To me, education was the least risky business to be in, right? All the time, education and business is like no brainer, right? How can you go bankrupt starting a school, or how can you do wrong starting a school, right? So I have preschools in Philippines as well, and as we know, Philippines is, the situation is very bad right now.
Yep.
I think most of the Asian countries like Singapore, Malaysia, schools are reopened, but Philippines still, my preschools are still closed. So I don't know when they are going to be open, seriously. In fact, the last I heard, about 400 over schools are actually closed in Philippines. Yeah, so
But
that's quite.
what we've seen from our
Mhm.
clients is that the enrollment rates have dropped by almost 60 to 70% in some cases in the Philippines.
Yes. So we were, we're in preschools. It's easier for university students and teenagers to be online because they're used to be online anyway, right? But for me, preschools was like, how do you get kids, 18 years old, 18 months to 6 years old to be doing an online learning? First, the parents will say no screen time. But we have no choice. Parents are slowly they accept it because I think parents are going crazy. So tell us a little bit more about at Akadasia. Do I
Acad
pronounce it correct?
it's
Akadasia.
Acad Asia. It's academics.
Acad Academics Asia.
Yeah.
Right. So I've been reading about what you guys do. Brilliant idea, upskilling teachers. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this.
Sure. So I think what we've mentioned on our website also, we are looking at training teachers because what I personally believe is that there is a massive problem with education technology at the moment. I think all companies are focused on the tech. Everybody's talking about AI and machine learning and all of this kind of cool things that you can do with the tech. We can assess you, we can automatically grade the assessments, we can play games, we can do all these kind of things, which is great. But I think that the problem is not the technology. I think the problem is the teachers. The bottleneck is the teachers because the teachers are just scared of technology. In
Yes.
fact, especially in the Asian context, what we've seen from the ground is that a majority of the teachers forget about teaching online. They've never even gone online to learn anything.
Yes, I agree with that,
Yeah.
especially
So,
Asian teachers, right?
yeah. So what is happening is now because of this sudden, requirement to go and teach online, they don't know anything on how to teach
Yes.
online or how to become instructional designers overnight, or how to even be able to provide tech support to their students, for example. Right? So they've resorted to what I call band-aid solutions, which are basically running classes on Zoom or running classes on WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger. All right,
Yes.
and that is not. Basically, it is very detrimental to the quality of education when you run a class like this. So think about it from a student's perspective. If you are, even if you're a 15, 16, 17-year-old kid who is now going into back-to-back Zoom calls of 1 hour each with different subjects because the teachers basically are trying to recreate the classroom experience.
Yes.
As a 16, 17-year-old, I mean, that's the worst thing possible for you.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, if the Gen Z is finding it so difficult to focus on anything, even in a classroom. I mean, even when they're in a class, beyond 15 minutes, 20 minutes, they cannot focus. And
Yes.
that's across the board, right? How do you then expect this generation to focus in the comfort of their bedroom or their living room or wherever it is that they are now? This thing, they've got air conditioning on, they're multitasking,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
there's music playing in the background or whatever. So
Mm-hmm.
I think what we believe is that the way the teachers approach curriculum design and engagement of students needs to change, and it needs to change drastically. If not, the quality of education is going to suffer all around. And it's not just about going back into classrooms post COVID, because even post COVID, I think blended learning is here to stay. So
Yes.
so you will have some level of online and offline, hybrid kind of a model. And keeping that in mind, the teachers really need to have a change in mindset. And that's what we are basically working on, is we are trying to help teachers develop this new mindset and understand not how to use just the technology, but most importantly, how to use the various pedagogical skill sets and apply those to whatever technology that they're using. So for example, if they're using a Google Classroom, it's okay, it's great, it's a great tool, but
Mm-hmm.
when do you use a certain tool for what objective? Why do you
Right.
use it? And how do you use it? So there are various, ways to approach it, and that's what we are
Yes.
basically doing.
I think, you spoke about pedagogy, and I'm a strong believer of that. And that's the reason why, previously when I chose to purchase the master franchise of the preschool, I specifically look for pedagogy and how they design the curriculum, and how they basically, the intent of, why do you teach? You teach not just because you want the kids to know ABC, the application of what you teach is, I think, very important. And I believe, the school, the beautiful schools and all this are just hardware, but what is more important is the software inside, which means it's the teacher. So I believe in really training the teachers. But unfortunately, in Asia, Singapore is an exception, but in most part of Asia, unfortunately, government are not putting enough, spending on education. Education is always, in some countries like in Malaysia, in Indonesia, or even in Philippines. I must say that, some provinces, the teachers, I do not know how, the students there can sort of leapfrog out of their poverty, right, if they keep teaching the same thing like 30, 40 years ago. Exactly. So, in your venture in this, right, I wanted to ask, like, how did it get started? I mean, your profile, you've always been in education. How did Akadasia come about?
Well, actually, I've not always been in education. My career started on a radically different note. I was, in fact, first, I think about 10 to 15 years, I was into professional audio and music recording. So, in fact, when I was in college, I used to be a songwriter. I had a band, and I went.
Did you release any album?
We did have an EP, but not very famous. But the thing is, the day I realized that I won't be, I'm not handsome enough to be on MTV, I shifted gears to kind of become a songwriter, music producer, and a recording engineer. And I did that for 12 years. And it was only after that, after having realized that I hadn't seen daylight for many, many years, I quit. I took a break, and then I started my very first venture, which was basically a consulting business on how do you help, how do you build recording studios and television and radio production studios. So that's my background primarily. It's creative arts, right?
Right.
And I mean, my education has been liberal arts. I'm a liberal arts student, so I have this creative mindset about me, which I really am grateful for. My start in education actually happened by absolute fluke. So I was actually consulting a client of mine who were building the largest film school in Asia.
Oh, wow,
And
that's interesting.
this is in India. So I was in New York at that time, and they were my clients. And So they were building the largest film school in Asia. And once we built the whole thing for them, they actually, asked me if I wanted to kind of come and work with them as their CTO. But I had my own business, so they made an offer to buy me out. At that point, no idea what an exit is. So the biggest number that we could possibly think of. And, they agreed. And of course, in hindsight, I now think that number was too small.
Yeah.
So,
there's always the if, right?
Exactly. But the thing is that also it's also learning in that sense. So that's how I got into education. I was a CTO for this large film school. And having done that for about 5 or 6 years, I was then hired to come on board here in Singapore at one of the polytechnics. I lasted about a year. I just couldn't take the bureaucracy over there.
And they say university is one of the most political place besides the politics.
And then after that, I set up 2 more companies, exited from both, set up my third venture, and I failed drastically to the point where I lost everything. And I was quite desperate for a job at that point, and Singapore Poly were the only ones who actually had the audacity to actually hire somebody like me. So I went to work for them for the first 2 years. I think I was the lecturer for music recording and audio production, because that's all I knew.
Okay.
And then I quit to actually start my next venture. And of course, my then director at SP, when she found out that I was looking for a new challenge, challenged me to write the new entrepreneurship education program for them. And that's how this whole journey started. So we wrote a program that grew, and then I lasted at SP for about 9+ years, until I quit last year to start Akadasia. So the reason why Akadasia started was primarily because, and in my last role at SP, where I was the founding director for SPINOFF, which is their Entrepreneurship Centre. Part of my role was to bring our entrepreneurship education program all the way to ASEAN, which we did. I think it was the largest entrepreneurship education program across the region back then. So during that time, I was traveling a whole bunch. And I realized this huge market gap where a lot of education institutions in the region did not have access to learning management platforms. And because back then, of course, this is before COVID, the learning management platforms were all expensive, and they were all in English. Every single platform was in English. And this straight away creates this big divide between the ones who can speak English and the ones who can't. So that's where the idea for Akadasia started, is how about, we do something that helps us democratize education and gives access to free education to all students everywhere using, online platforms which can be used in the language of the choice of the students and the teachers. So that's how the idea started last year. And then, of course, we pivoted massively, because when we started, we were not really looking at teachers. It was a typical LMS. But we've since pivoted from just being an LMS to actually being an authoring solution and a training solution for teachers.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's important, because I think, it is quite difficult for us, I mean, education as well, but talking to the universities and to sort of, tell them that they should be changing, I think, probably another, 1 decade or 2 decades. But, if those bureaucratic structure is not going to change, I believe there are teachers out there, or even professionals. I think all of us can be teachers. You don't have to really be a, qualified MOE or go through a, sort of like 4 years of teachers training to be a teacher. We can always teach someone something new, right?
Yep,
it doesn't have to be just geography or history. It can be any skills. And I think skills, future skills is really important for students nowadays. They say academically good is not good enough. So how has it been like, you started last year and then now the pandemic hit, right? But luckily you were online, right? Most of the things are online. And, how has business been, and what are the plans for Akadasia in the next, I noticed that you're fundraising. Maybe you could share with us, the future plans, and what are the fundraisings, what's the use of funds, for the next 1 or 2 years.
Sure. So actually, to be honest, when the lockdowns came in, it was quite a bit challenging, because I think it's a misnomer to kind of say that, as an edtech business, because we're online, and everybody needs some kind of an education solution, that all edtech businesses are going great. Actually, it's not the case. In fact, for 4 months during the lockdown, I was actually, quite worried as to how we might survive this. And it's not because people didn't want what we had; they actually needed what we had very, very desperately. But the problem was, how do they make the payments? Because everything was locked down. And in countries outside of Singapore, especially and in education institutions, payments are not made via credit cards. They actually are made, using traditional banking systems. And all banks, everything was closed during that time. So we basically had a hard time getting payments. So then, after we pivoted, we then started seeing growth in terms of our revenue. So our pivot was to move from B2B to B2C and B2G. So B2C segments kind of moved very quickly, because teachers themselves started signing up to the platform and learning.
Right.
They understood that, hey, listen, if I don't learn, I might get left behind, because this is what it takes to kind of teach now. And so we started seeing, exponential growth over there. And over the last 2 to 3 weeks, our B2B has kind of started picking up again, and B2G has opened up as well. So in Philippines, for example, we now have a subcontract to train close to 250,000 teachers for DepEd. And just last week, we signed an agreement with the Philippine Association of State Universities and Colleges, where it's an association of about 112 universities, where we will be training more than 70,000 teachers for them.
So that's very good.
So this is kind of like, kind of growing up. I mean, growing, in terms of the scale of our business. And it also addresses to something what you said earlier, that the governments are not really focused on education. And I think in the Philippines, at least I can see that mindset is kind of changing to a bit, one step at a time, I guess. And this is only the beginning.
Yeah.
And we've got, the state universities and Department of Education now working with us. So yes, we are raising funds, and the funds are basically to do a couple of things. First is we want to build a larger team. Currently, our team is fairly small. We have an interim CTO who's also my co-founder, but we are looking for a full-time CTO. And we're looking to build a pretty decent-sized customer support team, because this is kind of like the team that will support the teachers as we scale. And then we are also looking to use the funds to build version 2 of our platform, Freeju, which will allow us to build about 4 more revenue streams. And it will also allow us to kind of scale our marketing and business development activities, because right now, keeping cash flow concerns in mind, we have been very, very conservative in how we spend for marketing. But in spite of that, we're getting traction. So I can only imagine what we could actually do if we had decent amount of spend on marketing and business development issues. So those are 3 kind of things that we're looking to spend on.
Yeah, I think it's good. First of all, congratulations for the B2G contract. I think that's what will be the bread and butter for any companies. As an investor, we definitely look for such sort of checklist, right? Because I think like any e-commerce store, if you or a website or platform, if you are depending on an individual, there's no loyalty at all. There are so many, to be frank, a lot of platforms, content available outside. We're actually, flush with choices. But it's good that, if the government or a B2B, arrangement can be made. So congratulations on that. And, I just wanted to maybe ask you a few questions. How long have you been with us as the Asia CEO member, and how did you get to know about us?
Actually, Gary was kind enough to kind of contact me on LinkedIn and invite me to be a part of this.
Okay.
So I think it's been about 7-8 months, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Gary.
Okay. Okay. So you were part of the, were you on our WhatsApp group as well?
Yes, I am. I am on your WhatsApp.
Okay, okay. I hope, you will, I mean, we are a group of, CxOs that felt that, since we're all probably facing the same challenges and needing the same thing, we can probably help each other.
Yeah.
It started with, a couple of years ago when a few CxO felt very lonely and then started a meet up, and Gary did a good job, and we are now slightly bigger,
Right.
and we're hoping to sort of really connect with people, because I think LinkedIn is good, but it will not basically replace a face-to-face meeting, getting
Right.
to really know that person and have a conversation with substance. So we're trying to reach out to as many as possible. So thank you so much for your time today. Any last word for those who are, probably still struggling during this pandemic? How do you overcome, all the stress that is piling up, business or personal wise? Any advice?
I think the moment you decide to start up,
Mm-hmm.
you should kind of be married to your stress in that sense.
I like that.
As a startup founder, if you are not comfortable with your day-to-day stress that you will face, then you shouldn't be starting up to begin with.
Yeah.
So I think the only piece of advice I would kind of give to fellow CEOs and CxO members or even startup founders is I think at the end of the day, attitude really matters. Overall attitude, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's how you face your day-to-day situations head on, rather than being worried and stressed about it, because worries and stress don't really solve anything. What really solves is creative solutions. And I think this is also a good opportunity for everybody to kind of start thinking in a creative way, to kind of figure out what kind of strategies they should deploy for growing and expanding their business, and also never be married to one single idea. In fact, like what I've kind of seen in the last couple of months, how we started and where we are now, we've actually pivoted quite drastically. At the end of the day, whatever brings in revenue, you should not be like, I mean, of course, as long as it's illegal and you're not doing anything illegal or unethical or anything, but as long as it's within your own personal ethics and it's legal, I think whatever brings in the revenue at the end of the day. And because if there is no revenue, I mean, as a founder, I'm not really worried about myself, but I think I'm more worried about my team, because if we don't generate the revenue, then we don't have anything to help them cover their expenses at home. I think that's the bottom line. So
yeah, I think change is the only constant, as we all know, the old saying goes. But I think it is how a person actually adapt to change. Are you willing to let go of things that are not working well, whether it's personal or work? Do you want to hold on to the past and then do not have time to actually embrace the future?
Right.
So thank you very much for your time today, Neelesh. We hope to be in touch again, and probably catch up when I'm back in Singapore after the quarantine. Yeah. So thank you so much again. We'll be in touch. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Rina. Thanks,
Bye.
Gary. We appreciate that opportunity. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.